Aloha, folks. Which mic do I use? Just my own one or that? Yeah. Okay. Aloha. That means hello. It also means goodbye and love in Hawaiian. I've been in Hawaii 25 years, and yeah, I think Mike said most of it, so I'm just going to rip into this. I'm going to go through a few of them a little bit quickly at the beginning, and then I'll probably slow down. So storytelling's been around forever. It's part of the human condition. The Druids were second only in ancient Celtic culture to the kings and queens and chiefs. And so it's always been within the Celtic art, and one of the earliest examples I can come up with is the Gundestrup cauldron, which was found in Denmark, probably commissioned. If anybody else can enlighten me on any of this later, please do so. And lots of Celtic mythology, depiction of Cernunnos there, and various beasts. But they think it might be Thracian workmanship, so commissioned by possibly the Gauls or somebody like that, and ended up somehow in Denmark. Then we got the Pictish standing stones with the ancient Pictish symbols, and I know there's at least one person in the room that can illuminate us more on that one. And so the early ones were just the Pictish symbols. Were they boundary markers? Were they clan markers? Were they gravestones, or all of the above? Possibly coloured. Who knows? That's from one of the historic Scotland plaques on site at, in Veruri. And a little bit unusual. In fact, it's got some Ogham writing on it there. Continuing into the second phase of those stones, massive amounts of storytelling. Picture symbols at the top there. Then a battle scene with cavalry and infantry. And I believe that was the Battle of Nectansmere, which was between the Picts and the Northumbrians. But a lot of storytelling going on with the battle scene, but very interesting down in the corner, is what appears to be a dying Northumbrian soldier being pecked by a raven. So there's definitely a load of stuff going on in the Pictish stones. Quite often they had Pictish scenes on one side, but with the coming of Christianity, they were fantastically carved cross slabs on the other side, and they were shaped as opposed to the earlier ones. So you've got spirals, key patterns, knotwork, zoomorphic animals, all kinds of stuff going on there. And as they went on, they got more elaborate. That was the Hilton of Cadboll stone, which is in the National Museum in Scotland, but that's a reconstruction by Barry Grove that is on site out there. And that's the back side of the original one in the National Museum. Again, with a hunting scene, and and you've got an aristocratic lady there riding side saddle, and you can't see it in this, but she's wearing a penannular brooch of some distinction, and then you've got some trumpeters and a bunch of hunters there. So a pretty serious scene going on right there. And the bottom of that stone was broken, and they've reconstructed it there, as did George Bain in his book. And that actually kind of inspired me to do a piece there, which was for an art show in Maui called Red. And I managed to get in quite a lot of different shades of red. There's nothing in there that isn't a shade of red. Even the black and the white is the black, if you shine a light on it, you can see a little bit of red in there, kind of like a pint of Guinness. And then, of course, you come to the Lindisfarne Gospels and the Book of Kells. Storytelling going on there from the Bible. That was the Virgin and Child picture. And the four evangelists, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, represented, and they were many times represented throughout the book. I've studied it a few times, actually. Somebody bought me a facsimile, not the crazy expensive facsimile, but the in-between kind of one, so I've been through it 3 times. And then, of course, the Jesus page. And then the high crosses in Ireland, the stonemasons were doing amazing things, normally depicting scenes from the Bible and the scriptures. And were they painted? like possibly the picture stones. That one's in the Heritage Park in Wexford. Jumping ahead 900 years or so to the Celtic Revival. Mary Watts designed everything in this amazing chapel in Surrey near Guildford. And if you ever drive that way for whatever reason, or you're in London, it's worth a drive out there to look at that. It's an amazing building. About 70 local people helped her with that. And it's covered in this kind of stuff. And the interior is just as elaborate. And it's still a working chapel. It's kind of a wonder of Celtic art. It needs to be. A lot of people don't really know about that. I didn't know. Like a buddy of mine in London said, "Have you seen this place?" And he was not into Celtic art. He just told me I should go and see it. And of course, George Bain, jumping ahead again, and that's a pretty sizable hunting rug. And I believe Stephen Walker has one of them in his shop. And again, lots of detail, hunting scenes, lots of storytelling going on there. How do I follow these people? You can't, can you? Like all the great Celtic artists. Early on I was commissioned to do a little piece for a dissertation by a girl on Maui, a lady on Maui called Paula Noel. And she wanted her story in a clash of cultures. And so that's her at the top. And she's descended from the McPhee, well, she is a McPhee from the island of Colonsay in Scotland. And by folklore, they're descended from seal people. So there's a wee seal person down at the bottom there. But she also wanted some Hawaiian stuff in there. So we got the mo'o, or the lizard, and the honu, which is the turtle. And I was working in a dive shop at the time. I was a scuba diver for 10 years over there. And she wanted this clash of cultures, and she just kind of explained it to me verbally. And somehow I ended up doing the splayed cross and the Bridget's cross speared by a sword and exploding in a lightning bolt. And that's just what came into my head. And didn't really speak to her about it much. When I showed her that in the dive shop, she screamed and dropped her backpack. And I was, what have I done? What's going on? And she pulled out a little notebook, and the center part was almost identical. And we had not spoken about that at all. So I guess I was on the right path with that one. So part of my own story, my truck rolls around Maui, still does. It's in a bit of disrepair since that photograph. But and I was asked, the truck came first, and I was asked to do canvases of that, prints of it, which I couldn't until I put it down on a canvas. And I changed it very slightly, and the dragon's holding a crystal ball with a triskel in it, and I called it Guardian of the Goddess. So that's still there. And then I had to go at Hawaiian marine life, spurred on by 10 years of being a scuba instructor and seeing a lot of animals underwater every day. And also my entire adult life of surfing, about 40 years now. And so kind of free-form, modern kind of Celtic stuff, but it's all the Hawaiian marine life. And you got the Naia, which is the dolphin, Kahola, the whales, and even down to the reef, you've got the honu again, the turtle. You've got the haha'au, which is a manta ray. Kihi kihi is a Moorish idol. A little bit hard to see, but that's two different Celtic knots entwined in amongst all that. The puhi is the eel, mano, a shark. And my favourite one there, another two Celtic knots, a little bit difficult to see because of the colours. The humu humu nuku nuku apua'a, which is our state fish. It's called a triggerfish in nickname kind of thing. And in Hawaiian it means fish with a face like a pig, right? And when they repeat stuff twice in Hawaiian, like kihi kihi, it kind of means yellow or blonde. And if they repeat it twice, it means very much that. So, and the humu humu means it's very much got a face like a pig. Right? That one's called Maui Celtic Ocean. Then the 4 seasons, the turning of the year in the ancient Celtic world: Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane, and Lunasa, in that order. And in the Celtic world, darkness preceded light, so the day started at sunset, and the season started with the dark season first. So at Samhain, now All Hallows Eve, Halloween, the Kaliach, the old woman of winter, bangs a stick on the ground and makes it hard for the winter season. The Canunos we saw him before in the Gundestrup Cauldron, he's actually the gatekeeper for the other world, and he leads a thing called a wild hunt, which transports the departed souls to the other side, and where the wee folk or the she are. The summer season's gone, so the Morrigan kind of gives up her battle season and calms down for the winter, and hooks up with the good god, excuse my pronunciation, Dagda, Daida. For some reason, he's always portrayed in mythology without pants on. I assume he's some kind of fertility god. The Oak King gives up his kind of reign for the summer and hands it over to the Holly King for the winter. So all kinds of traditions there, with a lot of traditions of Halloween. If you dig into them, they can be pinned back to ancient Celtic traditions. The goddess Bridget Brige, Bridget's Day, also linked to Saint Bridget. So she would apparently touch her wand to the ground and make it light for the winter, and the Kaliach would have a rest. She was the goddess of childbirth, healing, the hearth, arts and inspiration, weaving, ale making, smithcraft, all kinds of stuff. And a lot of the traditions from her era came down to St. Bridget of Kildare, and became part of that story as well. And at the time, her sacred animal, the serpent, was popping its head out of a hole to see how the weather was like, and as with the badger was doing that as well. And that whole tradition, when the Celtic people went over to the Americas, the animal doing that in America was groundhog. So that actually kind of is the same day as Groundhog Day in America, interestingly enough. Beltane, or May Day, the sun god Bel. There's an ancient tree in Irish folklore called the Belia tree, and it spanned the 3 worlds: the sky world, the human world, and the other world, with some ancient traditions there. On the night of Beltane, they would light giant bonfires and walk between them and drive cattle between them to purify them and kind of bless them before they moved into summer pastures. The only real tradition left for the Belia tree is the maypole. Originally it was just red and white ribbons for the god and the goddess. Now it's all kind of coloured ribbons. Fertility dance. So when parents are joyfully taking their kids to do maypole dances, do they actually know what they're getting involved in? And down in Cornwall, around about that time of year, we have a special thing called the Obios, and that is also somewhat of a fertility dance. The biggest one is in Padstow in Cornwall, and there's a whole procession with music all around the town, and there's a few different instances of the Obios traditions. One is also Midsummer's Day. In Scotland, there's the old tale of Thomas the Rhymer, who at a crossroads met the fairy queen, and I won't go into that, it's a very long story, but he's in there as well. And you hear a lot of songs about the May morning dew, and there's a tradition that if you wash your face in the May morning dew, or maybe might be good for artists or fishermen to wash their hands in the May morning dew before sunrise. Then that keeps your hands working, keeps your beauty and all that kind of stuff for whoever wants to do that. And if you look in a dewdrop, it's always upside down. So I put a little she person in there, we folk, looking in the dewdrop. Apparently a lot of the invasions of Ireland, the waves of invasions were on the night of Beltane. So I put that little thing up there. And there's a Welsh myth, folklore, about Llw, Lugh in Irish, L-U-G-H, L-L-E-W in the Welsh. And he didn't have a bride for whatever reason, so they made him a flower bride, who apparently cheated on him. He got into it with the fella, killed him, but he got speared at the same time. And I think his father turned him into an eagle and he managed to escape. And but he returned at some point to his flower maiden, Blodeuwedd, and changed her into an owl so that she was shunned by other birds and could only fly at night. So the story goes. And as far as I know, the Welsh word for an owl is Blodeuwedd, which means flower face. So that all kind of ties into that. And then we've got Lunasa, the binding duty of Llw. And that was the sun god Llw, one of the warriors of the Tuatha De Danann. It was foretold that he would kill his grandfather when he was born, so they fostered him out and took him out of the way so that that couldn't happen, and he was fostered off to Tailtiu, the goddess of agriculture, and Manannan Mac Lir on the Isle of Man. And apparently his foster mother was said to have cleared a giant forest in Ireland, and the effort of that killed her, brought around her demise. And on her deathbed, she supposedly said, if you hold funeral games in my honour, Ireland will never be without song. So apparently they did that. And that was the Tailtian Games, which, according to one thing I read, was about the size of the Olympic Games and lasted for hundreds of years, if not 1,000+ years. And I think it stopped, according to what I read, in the 1200s or something. But I was a little bit taken by that idea that there was something that huge going on, and it's largely been forgotten about. But I think they did have the Tailtian Games maybe before World War I. Can anybody else enlighten me on that? And then they stopped at some point. And they said that the line of chariots heading to those games was 10 days long. So a harvest festival, and I've got a cornucopia of stuff there, and some various traditions with some of the flowers, bilberry picking and the various flowers at that time of year, and the Morrigans looking on there, everything. And people would sew corn dollies and put them maybe on the mantelpiece or somewhere in the house, and then sew them back into the fields the following year. So the spirit of the corn kind of lived on. Bit of a portrait I did of Bridget or Brige, the goddess of the hearth and the arts and inspiration. So the hearth I kind of put on her head, and the arts and inspiration, a bit of Latin kind of stuff flowing out of there. Goddess of smithcraft, weaving, healing, and it was said she could throw her mantle over Ireland for protection. Sun god Bel. I've covered most of his stuff. He was venerated right across Europe. A hotbed of his stuff was in Austria. And I went to look at the Hallstatt and Hawaiian cultures. I actually went to look at Latin, but the late Harris Moore, who had a little museum down in Dingle, he encouraged me to go and look at the Hallstatt stuff as well. So a lot of the symbols I took off some actual artifacts of that era. And I wanted a bit of hatchwork from the back of one of the mirrors, one of the bronze mirrors. And I was searching through, actually, it's probably George Bain's book, for something that I liked the shapes of. And I rearranged them a little bit, but the one that I picked, when I actually bothered to look at which one it was and where it was from St. Keverne in Cornwall. And I'd spent 10 years taking people scuba diving out of that village, which was kind of interesting. And and then I suddenly realized that the ancient term for West Cornwall was Belerion, which actually meant the land of Bel. So a lot of stuff just fell into place right there. And then St. Patrick, I'm not going to go on too much about St. Patrick because there's so much information here and I've learned an awful lot just being him myself. But I did take a different kind of take on what I wanted to do. And I'm going to have to read something. Just so that I can get it right. And a piece, I was reading part of Murtue's Life of St. Patrick, and one of the pieces was a supposed prophecy by some druids showing how Patrick was maybe seen by his opponents at that time that he was going to come up against. And it said, across the sea will come Ad's head, crazed in the head, his cloak with a hole for the head, his stick bent in the head. He'll chant impieties from a table in front of his house, and all his people will answer, so be it, so be it. So the Ad's head thing kind of interested me. So I guess really what I took from that was the little clerical tonsure. I may be completely off historically here, but this is an artistic representation. So one of the little tonsures that they had when they shaved their heads was this little tuft that looks like an adze at the front, so I decided I was going to do that. And behind him is the Paschal flame that he lit in the Hill of Slain, and at a time when there was no fires supposed to be going on, so that enraged King Lear and his druids. He sent out a bunch of guys to go after him, and I think other people are going to talk about this. The Lorica, the incantation, protection from God to protect him, the deer's cry, St. Patrick's breastplate, and that's the deer on there. And then the whole business about snakes. Apparently, according to folklore, he did come up against two beasts, an eel-like one called the Coronach, and he banished that one to Loch Derg, or Red Lake, so that's reference to the blood of the beast. And a dragon-like Oilifeist, which was so angry when he turned up that it decided to leave Ireland, and by folklore tradition, apparently smashed its tail on Ireland and created the course of the River Shannon. So that's him with his bell, which is still in the National Museum in Dublin, and the crozier, which was simple at the beginning, but later apparently encrusted with gold and jewels and stuff. And then, of course, the shamrock that he used to illustrate the Holy Trinity. From the radio interview I just did with the singer of the Irish Rovers a long time ago, it came to light that I could do a bit of Celtic art, and he asked me if I'd do an album cover. So fortunately, for the last 15 years, I've been doing all the work for the Irish Rovers. Local boys, originally from Belfast and Ballymena, they all left when they were kids and had a giant career in North America and beyond. They did come back, and they were on Ulster television for a long time with one TV series. But it's been interesting working with those guys. That's a stage backdrop I did for them, which is fabulous when you walk into a theatre and see that hanging behind them. And they asked me to do their 50th album cover. And I said, can you give me a brief on that? And he was, no, do what you like. Oh, okay, I'd rather a brief. So I didn't know what to do with that, so I thought, okay, the Irish Rovers, 50 years. And my wife famously said, do the Book of Kells. Really? A bit of a tall order, so I didn't know what to do with that. I sat and looked at a blank piece of paper for a couple of weeks, wrote a bullet list of their career and song titles and stuff, and then I couldn't come up with anything. I wrote out the words, the Irish Rovers, 50 years. I sat and looked at that for 2 weeks, couldn't come up with anything. And then finally I did come up with this. And nothing happened with this until I drew these two little heads here, because I was on a deadline and I still couldn't come up with anything. So I've got to draw something. So I just drew George Miller meeting Jimmy Ferguson. That's their two faces. They met in 1963 in a little folk club and started singing together. And from that moment on, the whole thing just came out, and it was just non-stop for a couple of 100 hours until I got that done. And there's a lot of stories in there. They came from Ballymena, so the 7 towers of Ballymena, 4 churches, the castle of the Adair family, the town hall, and the spinning mill, connected to their father's accordion, which was their big influence. George was offered promised a pony when as a young lad he left Ireland, and he never got his pony, so I put that in there for him. That's them crossing the waves, a bunch of interlocked Driscolls over to Canada. Their big break was a cafe in Calgary called Phil's Pancake House. So there's a little stack of pancakes. That's the Rover record label dog, George's dog. The second break, you can hardly see it there, but there's a purple onion right there. That was in San Francisco. They had a big run of dates there. The biggest break was at the Pasadena Ice House in California, and Decca record label picked them up. That's the 60s colors of the Decca record label, D-E-C-C-A, which led to a load of singles and an album. This somewhat traditional looking piece of work, the key pattern, and that's actually a camera with a lens and the 2 reels on top. And they were on CBC in Canada, Global Television and Ulster Television for a total of about 13 years, which made them a household name on the other side. Showing my age here. Does anybody remember the Virginian TV series, the cowboy series? Okay. They were singing bank robbers in the Virginian. So some little spirals there. It looks like a gun, right? Because that's to represent them as singing bank robbers. A bunch of hits they had. The biggest one chased the Beatles up the charts in 1968, knocked it off the top, and they had a #1 and #2 in a lot of countries around the world. And that was the Unicorn Song. There were green alligators and long-necked geese, humpback camels and chimpanzees, cats, rats, and elephants. As sure as you're born, the loveliest of all was the unicorn. And they had another hit with the orange and the green. The B-side of that Unicorn Song, which sold a lot of copies, like millions at the time, the B-side was the Black Velvet Band. And obviously not their song, a traditional song, so her hair hung over her shoulder, tied up with a Black Velvet Band. They had a cover hit with Puff the Magic Dragon. They had another cover hit with Lily the Pink. They had, in the TV show, I was going through the Book of Kells looking for images to base stuff on, and there was 2 heads on fellas in the Book of Kells that looked exactly 100% like George and his brother Will. So I just thought I'd just go with those guys. In their TV series, they were sat on a toadstool. English fella, Ken Gibson, was a producer of a TV series, and he actually pioneered the use of green screen. So guys were flying up from Hollywood to Vancouver to look at the use of green screen, which was new. It was very crude. I mean, it had these fellas as leprechauns being picked up by a stork and dropped into a teacup and stuff like that. It's extremely crude stuff, but that made them a hit because the kids were watching with their parents, and now they have like 4 generations of people going to their concerts. They had a chain of pubs called the Rose and Crown and the Unicorn. They represented Canada. Although they're all Irish, these boys, they represented Canada in various expos. Their closing show, Stop Her Forever, has been the Drunken Sailor song. And they had a mad Christmas hit called Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. And there's a few other things in there, but there's 26 references to their career and 11 song titles in that piece right there. I had to go a Titanic thing. George was born on the day of the sinking of the Titanic. It's always been on his mind. He wrote a fabulous song as a tribute to the Titanic, and he asked me to do a single cover for that. On Maui, Mick Fleetwood has a fabulous restaurant or pub on Maui, and he has a rooftop bar that's open to the sunset. Straight view of the ocean, sunset in the winter, whales jumping around, and his management called me and said, we want a bagpiper every night at sunset. My first reaction was, why? Right? And you're going to drive people nuts. And I had been busking on the street actually playing the pipes, and I'd had the cops called on me a few times, so I didn't want to be that guy, right? But they took me down there and showed me the rooftop bar, and it was third floor. The sound kind of dissipated and floated around. It wasn't annoying, so I took the job on. And I did that for about 5 years with 2 other guys, and then I just couldn't do it anymore because I was away too much. But he had an art gallery and on the bottom floor, and my buddy ended up being the manager, and he's, get your stuff down here. And I was, well, do you need to ask Mick? And he was, nah, just get it down here. So we just hung it, and Mick walked in, and he loved it. So that worked out well. And but I ended up doing a piece for Mick. I read his biography, and which is crazy, as you would imagine. And so I did a piece that told his life story, really, with all little images. And the F is him as a young man about the Rumours album era. And it's got, so he was born in Cornwall, so it's the St. Brendan's flag right there. His mum was Scottish, and his dad was English, but he described him as an Irish storyteller. Both of them's middle name is Kells, and his dad was a RAF squadron leader, wing commander, so that represents that. His mum was Scottish, and her family was the Carr family, so that's the Carr tartan. And the big hit that I remember when I was a kid was a bluesy instrumental called the Albatross. So I put an albatross in there. And then a big breakthrough album he had was an album called The English Rose in America, and a little drum kit made of Celtic knots. And this is Mick today, and he always wears flamboyant bright colours and a red neck scarf. And he's always been proud of his middle name and his Irish storyteller dad, so I put the colours in there. One of the last big pieces that I did was a fabulous poem by Alan C. Inman about music. And I am music, most ancient of the arts. I'm more than ancient, I'm eternal. Even before life commenced upon this earth, I was here, in the winds and the waves. When the first trees and flowers and grasses appeared, I was among them. And when man came, I at once became the most delicate, most subtle, and most powerful medium for the expression of man's emotions. When men were little better than beasts, I influenced them for their good. In all ages, I've inspired man with hope, kindled their love, given a voice to their joys, cheered them on to valorous deeds, and soothed them in times of... Can't read my own thing. I've played a great part in the drama of life, whose end and purpose is the complete perfection of man's nature. Through my influence, human nature has been uplifted, sweetened, and refined. With the aid of men, I've become a fine art. From Tubal Cain to Thomas Edison, a long line of the brightest minds have devoted themselves to the perfection of instruments through which men may utilize my powers and enjoy my charms. I have myriads of voices and instruments. I'm in the hearts of all men and on their tongues. In all lands, among all peoples, the ignorant and unfettered know me, unlettered know me, not less than the rich and learned. For I speak to all men in a language that all understand. Even the deaf hear me if they listen to the voices of their own souls. I'm the food of love. I have taught men gentleness and peace, and I've led them onward to heroic deeds. I comfort the lonely and I harmonize the discord of crowds. I am a necessary luxury to all men. I am music. It's one of the best things I've ever heard about music. And I was asked the commission to illuminate that for the singer of the Irish Rovers. He just had a little photocopy thing in his music room. And so I did that. And there's young George looking down on the whole thing, wondering what's about to happen. There's a muse there playing a harp. There's present day older George there. There's actually me playing the bagpipes and a buddy of mine playing the bodhrán. His wife asked me to do it in the colour palette of the ancient book, so I tried to stay true to that. And it was all hand-drawn and hand-done, hand-painted. And I struggled for a long time to find out any information on the guy that wrote that, Alan C. Inman. And my sister-in-law got onto it, and she found his gravestone in Massachusetts, his house in Massachusetts, but we couldn't link it directly. I wanted to know if it was public domain or not. And it had been painted on a cafeteria wall in a university in America. It had been performed 1,000 times on stages. And eventually we found a newspaper article from 1967 saying that he donated it to the American Music Publishing Association for the world to enjoy. So I felt good about that fact that it was in public domain right then. And I tried to contact anybody I could find under that name. I couldn't find his family. I couldn't find anything. A couple of years later, on Facebook, of all things, Rob Inman contacted me. And I was, I hope he's going to be okay with this. And he was just blown away. He loved it. And he said, he wanted to buy a couple, and I said, you know what, I've been looking for the family, I will send you a giant version of this, which I did, and then he bought a couple for his sons. So it was a fabulous circle to be connected with his descendants and be able to share that with them. And that's it, ending up with George Miller, and it's hanging up in his music room, all framed up now. And there we have it. Storytelling has always been there, and it's certainly been part of my life and all my artwork that I've done. So aloha, mahalo, thanks for having me.